Helena's ancestral bond with the Lands of Brittany. In the previous episode, the dawn mist guided Alexander, Helena, Makeda, and Amina through a delta that breathed like a living being. And in the heart of that labyrinth of waters, Concarneau was born, not merely a shelter, but an ancestral covenant between the ocean and memory, sealed by the symbol of the sun entwined with the star. The founding of the first sacred port brought trials of rain, mud, and moral dilemmas that tested the crew's unity to the very edge of what they could endure. But it also awakened in each of them something that cannot be built, only revealed: the strength of a community willing to take root without surrendering the horizon. When the call of the sea returned, Alexander and Helena understood that staying is also a form of navigation. And so, beneath the northern lights and waters that radiated light from within, the Aletheia and the Oasis of Moonlight set sail once more, moving in circles that were not errors, but teachings, until Douarnenez unveiled itself, the place where the path recognizes itself, and where the spirit of the group was prepared, without anyone yet knowing, for the encounter that would change everything. In this new episode, we will discover together how, as they leave Douarnenez, Alexander, Helena, Makeda, and Amina will steer the Aletheia through waters that do not obey the common laws of navigation. Because the English Channel is not merely a geographical passage, but an invisible threshold between what is known and what cannot yet be named. From the high cliffs, the sight of the mountain ranges beyond the sea will ignite in Helena a premonition that is not her own. It belongs to every woman of her bloodline who once gazed upon those peaks before her, and who, for reasons history never fully recorded, could not follow. The crossing, marked by winds that shift in intent and silences denser than any storm, will prepare the spirit of the group for a destination that does not reveal itself at once. Because the destinations that matter never reveal themselves at once. In Amesbury, in Brittany, the entire journey will change in meaning when Helena discovers that the ground beneath her feet holds a bloodline root she never knew she had. Edith, sister of her mother Tiphys and cousin of her father Lysimachus, will emerge from the shadows of the forest as the answer to a question Helena never knew she was asking. What follows is not merely a celebration, it is the closing of a circle that began before the birth of anyone present, and that only now, in this very instant, holds the conditions to be complete. The farewell to Douarnenez and the call of the mountain ranges. There was something about those mountains that should not have been visible at that distance, and yet Helena could see them. The dawn rose over Douarnenez with that particular quality of light that does not illuminate. It reveals. The dunes that had sheltered the group's days of rest glowed amber, as though the sand itself had absorbed everything that had happened there and was now returning it in the form of luminosity. Alexander walked along the beach with slow steps, leaving marks that the sea would soon erase with the indifference of forces that keep no human records. Each footprint seemed a question. Is it possible to leave a place that has already left you? Helena walked at his side, feeling her heart oscillate between anticipated longing and that other feeling, the one with no name, no apparent origin, yet which pulses with the regularity of a second heartbeat. A feeling she had known all her life, but which on that morning pointed, for the first time, toward a specific direction. And to you who accompanies this crossing, who feels the wind of these ancient stories touch your soul as though they were your own, I leave a simple but essential request. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share in the comments what this moment stirs within you. Each gesture of yours is like a flame lit in this bonfire that unites hearts across time and space. In doing so, you do not merely strengthen this voyage, you make it possible. Because, like the sailors of the Aletheia, you too blow the winds of destiny into our sails. The story continues, but it is your presence that keeps the fire burning and the sea awake. The Aletheia and the Oasis of Moonlight rested at anchor in the cove, with that stillness of things that already know what comes next, and wait only for the humans to realize it. The crew worked in silence, the kind of silence that is not the absence of conversation, but the presence of something more important than anything words could contain. Ropes adjusted, masts checked, provisions organized with the precision of those who have learned that the sea does not forgive those who depart unprepared. Makeda observed everything with eyes that had changed since Concarneau. No longer the eyes of a princess discovering the world for the first time, but those of someone who had begun to understand that discovering the world is, in truth, a way of discovering oneself. Amina moved among the crew with that serenity, which is not the absence of an awareness of danger, but an excess of trust and purpose. From the height of the hills that cradled Douarnenez, Helena stopped, not because she chose to. She stopped because her feet simply refused to continue. And it was there, in that involuntary stillness, that she saw the mountains, distant, wrapped in mists that did not belong to the dawn, for that haze would not dissolve with the sun, as it was not made of moisture, but of time. A mountain range rose beyond the sea with the precision of something that had been placed exactly there to be found by exactly her. The mountains did not shine. They did something different. They pulsed, with an invisible frequency that Helena perceived not through her eyes, but through her blood. A shiver ran the length of her spine with the slowness of things that do not wish to be ignored. It was not fear, it was recognition. The sensation of being called by name in a language that precedes words, the language of blood, of ancestral memory, of a destiny woven before birth itself. Alexander climbed the hill and found Helena there, motionless as one of the ancient stones of Douarnenez, yet vibrating with something that stones do not possess. He followed her gaze without asking what she was looking at, because he already knew. He felt it too. "Do you feel what I feel?" she asked, without drawing her eyes from those mountains that were at once distant and utterly present. "Yes," he answered, with the honesty that is only possible between people who have stopped trying to protect one another from certain truths. It is as if those mountains hold something that belongs to us, but that we have not yet learned to name. Helena nodded with a slowness that was thought in motion. "They are not merely stone, Alexander. They are portals. And on the other side, something, or someone, is waiting for us." He took her hand. Neither of them needed to say anything more. What existed between them in that instant was more complete than any sentence could be. When the sun reached its highest point, that hour when shadows disappear and the world becomes, for a single moment, without depth, without hiding place, completely exposed, the vessels began to move. The unfurling of the sails sounded like the wings of something that belongs neither fully to the world of birds nor to the world of men, something between the two that exists only in the instant of departure. The Aletheia glided over the waters with the elegance of one who knows the sea's secret rhythm, and the Oasis of Moonlight followed faithfully, like a kept promise that requires no witnesses. From the beach, those who remained waved not with sorrow, but with gratitude, because gratitude is the emotion of those who understand what they have received, and Douarnenez had understood. As the village shrank on the horizon, Helena did not turn her face away. She simply kept watching until there was nothing left to see. And then, only then, did she turn toward the distant mountains. The call had not diminished with the distance. It had grown. The crossing of the English Channel and the shifting winds. The English Channel was not what the map suggested. It was something else entirely. The sea opened before the vessels like a scroll upon which history was still being written, vast and filled with possibilities that could be promises or traps, depending on who encountered them and with what degree of readiness. The Aletheia cut through the waters with resolve, and Alexander held the helm with hands that knew their work. Yet his eyes never ceased searching the horizon with that quality of attention that is not a captain's vigilance, but the anticipation of someone awaiting confirmation of something he already feels as truth. Helena, seated at the prow, let the wind do its work with her hair, with the passivity of one who has learned that certain forces need space to do what they came to do. She felt that each league sailed was not merely distance covered, but a layer of understanding stripped away, as though the sea were, with each wave, removing from her something she no longer needed to carry. The channel revealed itself not as a passage, but as a living test. The waters, at times calm, with the specific intention of creating false security, at times turbulent with the brutality of things that want to know what you are made of, seemed to have a purpose that surpassed the physics of currents and wind. Cross currents arose from nowhere, not from geographical nowhere, but from that other nowhere, deeper, where things exist before taking visible form. The wind blew in unpredictable gusts, now from the north, now from the south, as if the very air were deliberating, weighing the intentions of the sailors before deciding whether to aid or challenge them. Makeda, observing the behavior of the sea with eyes that had learned to read the invisible, murmured to Amina, "It is as if the ocean is asking questions." The guardian answered without hesitation, and every response we give with the helm is also a choice of the soul. For 3 days, the crossing demanded a vigilance that was not merely physical. The nights were dense with low clouds that concealed the stars, as if the sky were deliberately removing all points of reference in order to force the sailors to find others within themselves. Alexander navigated by instinct and by the subtle reading of currents, the kind of reading that is learned in no school, but that develops over years of surrender to the sea. Helena remained at his side through the night watches with a presence that was, for him, more orienting than any star. "There is something beyond these waters," she said one night in the small hours, while the mist covered the deck with the specific consistency of things that exist between the visible and the invisible. "It is not danger, it is presence, as though we are being watched by eyes that do not belong to this time." Alexander did not doubt her. He felt it too, and felt that she had named with precision what he had not yet managed to formulate. The crew, seasoned by the storms of the open ocean, began to show a different kind of discomfort. Not the discomfort of physical threat, but that other kind, harder to name and therefore harder to fight. The discomfort of the inexplicable. The silence of the sea was unsettling, not because of the absence of sound, but because of the quality of what was present within it. The dense and deliberate waiting of one who guards a secret and holds out for the other to ask the right question. Some of the men murmured ancient prayers with the urgency of those who sense that formal protection is the only distance they can keep between themselves and the incomprehensible. Makeda showed no fear. She showed something more interesting and more courageous: curiosity. A curiosity that did not retreat before what it could not understand, but that advanced with the humility of one who knows that comprehension comes after experience, never before. "Thule is closer," she would say. And the phrase was not hope, it was diagnosis. On the 4th day, the wind shifted with the abruptness of things that have made a decision. A sharp northerly breeze carried with it the scent of pine trees and damp earth, signals that arrived not through navigational instruments, but through the body, the sense of smell, the skin, that 6th sense that sailors develop after years given over to the sea. The Aletheia gained speed, and Helena rose to her feet with a heart in a state she could not have classified as joy or terror. Perhaps because the difference between the two, in certain fundamental moments, is merely a question of how much we are willing to receive what is coming. The mountain ranges, once distant and nebulous like promises unsure of themselves, were beginning to reveal themselves with a clarity that was not merely visible, it was felt. As though the mountains were not becoming visible because the mist had lifted, but because the group had finally become capable of seeing them. When the coastline appeared on the horizon, the murmur that moved through the crew was not merely relief. It was the kind of recognition that human beings rarely experience in conscious life, yet which the body has stored since before any memory. That land, with its high cliffs and its vegetation that seemed green in a more intense way than any green the sailors had ever seen, felt familiar even to those who had never set foot in that hemisphere. Alexander and Helena exchanged a glance, one of those glances that contain an entire conversation composed of questions and answers that neither of them could have articulated in words, yet which both understood with the completeness of things that are felt before they are thought. The sea had fulfilled its role, not as guardian nor as master, but as initiator. And now, the land called out for the next stage of a transformation that none of the five aboard yet fully understood had begun, long before any of them had made the decision to set sail. The arrival in Brittany and the ancestral premonition. Helena's feet touched the sand, and the sand responded. The Breton coast rose before them with that quality of presences that require no movement to demonstrate power. Cliffs of gray stone crowned by dense forests that descended to the sea with the deliberateness of things that had arrived there first and therefore owed passage to no one. The sound of waves breaking against the rocks echoed with a rhythm that was not random. It carried the periodicity of something intentional, like drums receiving pilgrims with the specific protocol reserved for those who have been awaited long enough for the waiting itself to become ritual. Alexander steered the Aletheia into a sheltered cove with the skill of one who knows his craft and with the caution of one who understands that certain arrivals are irreversible. The Oasis of Moonlight followed, and when the anchors plunged into the water, the sound they made was not merely mechanical, it was conclusive. The first to disembark were Alexander and Helena, followed by Makeda and Amina, in an order that had not been agreed upon, but that seemed, as it unfolded, to have been the only possible order. When Helena's feet touched the damp sand of that beach, something happened that she had not expected and for which there was no preparation. Her entire body recognized it, not her mind, which was still processing the arrival with all of its logical machinery. Her body, the skin, the bones, the blood circulating through her veins with the same warmth she had inherited from women who had walked that very ground before her. A tremor moved through her from the soles of her feet to the back of her neck, not from cold, but from that specific quality of vibration that rises when something sleeping inside us is awakened by contact with its counterpart in the outer world. Alexander sensed Helena's emotion in the way she stood motionless, and took her hand with the silent gesture of those who have learned that certain forms of comfort require no words. "Do you feel as though you have been here before?" he asked. She nodded, unable to speak, because speech demands that one choose between possibilities, and what she felt in that moment had no alternatives. It was simply true. Makeda walked along the beach with that peculiar mixture of wonder and belonging that develops in people who have grown up in contact with the sacred and who, because of this, recognize the sacred when they encounter it without needing a sign to tell them so. The moss-covered stones, the streams descending from the hills with the musicality specific to waters that are in no hurry, the birds of plumage she had never seen but that seemed to know her. Everything in that place possessed a quality of completeness, as though the entire landscape had been composed with the purpose of being exactly what it was, neither in excess nor in want. Amina surveyed the surroundings with that attentiveness that never becomes paranoia, yet never fully relaxes, and within her there was, ever more clearly, a growing serenity that only emerges when a place confirms what instinct had already presumed. "This land is ancient," she said, with the voice of one making a scientific observation about something that exceeds science. "But not hostile. It receives us the way one recognizes old friends." Makeda smiled. "Then we were expected." The wind answered with a gentle sigh, which was, or was not, merely wind. The crew disembarked gradually, turning the beach into a space that was simultaneously an arrival and a preparation for what was to come. The camp was set up near the banks of a crystal-clear stream, with the efficient organization that develops in groups that have already learned to work together under pressure. Fires were lit, and the aroma of bread and barley began to spread through the air with the generosity of simple things that are, in truth, the most essential. Helena helped with the tasks through the mechanical gestures of one who is present in body but absent in another dimension, because within her, something pulsed with the insistence of a call that could not be postponed by provisions or campsites. "I need to walk," she said to Alexander, in that voice that is not a request for permission, but a communication of necessity. He understood without question. He had learned, over the course of the journey, that the moments when Helena felt this compulsion to walk were precisely the moments when something important was about to happen. The four of them, Alexander, Helena, Makeda, and Amina, entered the forest along a path that seemed to have been traced not by human hands, but by the patient accumulation of footsteps across generations of people who had passed through that same place with the same purpose that none of them had ever been able to name completely. The trees formed a green canopy that filtered the sunlight into beams that seemed anything but random, each one resting on exactly the place where it was needed, illuminating exactly what needed to be seen. The ground was covered in moss that muffled the sound of their footsteps with such efficiency that the group moved in silence, not merely because they had decided to be quiet, but because the environment itself had absorbed the very possibility of noise. Helena walked ahead, guided by an instinct she did not rationally understand, but in which she trusted with a completeness that was itself a transformation, because she had reached that point in the journey where trust and understanding were no longer the same thing, and where trust had revealed itself as the shortest path between ignorance and destiny. After a time that could have been an hour or an eternity, and the difference between the two, they discovered, depended solely on how much presence you brought to the path. They arrived at a clearing where sunlight poured down in cascades with the specific abundance of moments that deserved to be completely illuminated. At the center, a perfect circle of ancient stones, not ancient as in old, but ancient as in eternal, as though they had arrived there before time itself and had decided to wait. A spring rose from the earth at the heart of the circle, feeding a small lake that reflected the sky with a fidelity no human mirror has ever managed to equal. Helena approached with steps that slowed progressively, as though each meter separating her from the spring were also a meter separating her from a truth that, once touched, could never again be unknown. When her fingers met the surface of the water, the vision arrived with the precision of things that do not ask permission. A fair-haired woman, resembling her, kneeling in that same spot, offering prayers in a voice Helena could not hear, but felt vibrating in her very bones. And beside the woman, a child, Helena as a child, watching with eyes full of wonder, a scene that was not yet happening, yet was in some way already happening. The vision vanished, but the certainty it left behind did not vanish. It never would. Her mother, Tiphys, had stood in that exact place. And that spring held the beginning of a story that Helena was only now discovering was also her own. The revelation of blood and the encounter with Edith. The voice came from the forest before there was any sign of human presence, and it was a voice Helena recognized, without ever having heard it before. Helena remained kneeling at the edge of the spring with her heart beating in a rhythm that was not hers alone. It belonged to every woman of her bloodline who had knelt before sacred water with that same weight of unanswered questions pressing against their chest. Alexander, Makeda, and Amina watched in silence with the respect of those who understand that there are moments that do not permit intervention, only witness. The air vibrated with that subtle and unmistakable energy Helena had learned to recognize over the course of the journey. the energy of the instant immediately preceding a revelation, when the universe pauses to ensure that everyone present is attentive enough to receive what is coming. And then a sound broke the silence. Not an intrusion, but a completion. Branches cracking with the calculated precision of steps that know where they fall. And then, emerging from that sonic preparation, a woman's voice, clear and steady, that came from no specific direction, but from all directions at once. Whoever comes to the spring of remembrance must be prepared to find what they have forgotten. Helena rose at once, her body taut with that tension that is not fear, but recognition on the verge of completing itself. The voice sounded familiar to her with the familiarity of things that were known before any conscious memory. From the shadows between the trees emerged a woman, and the manner in which she emerged was that of something not presenting itself for the first time, but reappearing after an absence too long to be considered a simple absence. She was tall, with an elegance of bearing that was not learned but inherited, with silver hair that shone in the sunlight. Not the silver of metals, but the silver of things that have carried great heat for a very long time and now radiated as light. Her face bore the marks of time with the honesty of those who have never tried to erase them, having understood that each line is proof of something that was lived and not merely endured. Her eyes, gray like Helena's, gray with that same specific hue that is not the absence of color, but all colors fused, shone with a liveliness that entirely belied the silver of her hair. She wore a linen tunic with embroidered symbols that Helena recognized before she recognized the woman. They were the same ones Tiphys, her mother, used to weave into winter cloaks with a concentration that Helena, as a child, had never fully understood, but which now, in this instant, in this place, she was beginning to understand. The woman stopped a few steps away, observing Helena with that specific expression that exists only when we recognize in someone the presence of one we have loved and lost. "You have her eyes," she said, her voice trembling, not from weakness, but from an emotion that exceeds the capacity for containment. "You have Tiphys's eyes." Helena felt the ground disappear beneath her feet, not metaphorically, but as a physical sensation, as though gravity had decided to suspend its rules for a single instant. How did you know my mother?" The woman smiled, and tears began to fall down her face with the serenity of things that have been held too long to contain themselves indefinitely. "Because I am her sister. My name is Edith." Time seemed to freeze, not in the dramatic manner of stories, but in the real manner, the one in which consciousness suddenly surpasses the speed of events and perceives them in slow motion, absorbing every detail with an intensity that the normal pace of the world would never permit. Helena tried to process the words: sister of Tiphys, aunt of Helena, a woman who had existed her entire life, unknown, on the other side of a sea that Helena had crossed not because of her, or perhaps, she now discovered, precisely because of her. Alexander stepped closer and placed his hand on Helena's shoulder with the specific steadiness of presences that do not intend to prevent the emotion from happening, only to ensure that it happens safely. Makeda and Amina exchanged glances of astonishment, not the superficial kind, but the kind that emerges when one witnesses something that confirms what has always been suspected about the non-accidental nature of the universe. Edith stepped forward, extending her hands with the openness of one offering not a handshake, but an embrace delayed by decades. "When Tiphys left with Lysimachus for the south, I stayed here, guarding the roots of our lineage. We made a promise that one day, if the gods allowed, our paths would cross again." Her voice faltered, but she finished because certain sentences must be spoken to the end regardless of the cost. "Tiphys never returned, and now you return in her place, Helena, carrying her spirit alive within your chest." Helena could not hold back her tears, nor did she try, because she had reached a point in the journey where containment was no longer a virtue, but an obstacle. She stepped toward Edith, and the two embraced with that quality of embrace that transcends physical contact and becomes something closer to a temporary fusion of histories. Because there, it was not merely two women meeting, but two generations, two banks of the same river, two halves of a promise that had waited decades to be fulfilled. It was as though, in that embrace, Helena were also embracing Tiphys, and all the women of her lineage who had come before Tiphys, and all those who would come after Helena, and the entire circle, with all its circumference impossible to be encompassed by two pairs of human arms. "She spoke of you," said Helena, her voice thick with that emotion which renders vowels unsteady. "On cold nights, when she told me stories of Thule, she spoke of a sister who had stayed behind to guard the land while she guarded the sea." Edith stroked Helena's hair with the gesture of one recognizing the texture of something that had been described many times, but is being encountered for the first time. "And I kept my promise. I guarded this land, waiting for the day someone of our lineage would return, and here you are, carrying with you the wind of the south and the spirit of the north." Alexander watched the scene with that specific warmth that rises in the chest when we witness the healing of a wound that existed before us and would continue after us, but which in this instant, this single instant, was closed. He knew that encounter was not coincidence with the same certainty with which he knew the direction of the wind, not through evidence, but through the accumulated understanding of how things work when you pay enough attention for long enough. Makeda, moved with that specific emotion of one who recognizes in another story their own from a different angle, stepped toward Helena and took her hand. "Do you see, Helena? The sea did not bring us only to unknown lands. It brought us to the home you never knew you had. Amina, always wise with the wisdom that does not care for noise, but which, when it speaks, says something that endures. The paths of the gods are circular. That which appears to be a departure is always, at its core, a return." Edith looked at the entire group, at those four people whom destiny had stitched together with threads of different materials, yet who, even so, formed a fabric stronger than any one of them would have formed alone, and said with a voice that was at once decree and invitation, "You come not as strangers, but as children who return. This land is yours as much as it is mine. Today, we will celebrate not only the encounter, we will celebrate the continuity of a lineage that never broke, even when all those who formed it believed it was irreparably severed." Amesbury, the ancient village and the celebration of reunion. There was something about Amesbury that no map could capture, because it was not geographical. The village revealed itself to the traveler's eyes with that quality of things that do not display themselves, but present themselves, a subtle and fundamental distinction. Houses of stone and timber were scattered across the landscape with the harmony not of planned symmetry, but of the organic coexistence of things that have grown together long enough to learn to share space without competing for it. The thatched rooftops glowed golden in the light of late afternoon, as though they had absorbed the sun of enough generations to hold it within them. The aroma that reached them was layered: bread, aromatic herbs, damp earth, something floral that Helena could not identify with her mind, but which her body identified, because the body, unlike the mind, does not depend on names to recognize what belongs to it. At the center of the village, a bonfire burned with the constancy of something maintained not by human hands, but by collective intention, the pulsing heart of a community that had learned that certain flames must be kept alive even when no one fully understands why. When Edith and the group appeared at the entrance, the work ceased, not abruptly, as when there is a threat, but with the gentle gradualness of things that stop to honor what has arrived. Edith raised her hand in greeting, not the protocolar gesture of those who perform rituals, but the weighted gesture of those who know what the gesture means and choose to make it by the force of that meaning. Her voice echoed across the square with that quality of voice that certain leaders possess, not the voice of authority, but of truth, and the difference between the two is that the first demands obedience while the second inspires attention. My brothers and sisters of Amesbury, I bring you those whom the gods promised would come. This is Helena, daughter of Tiphys, my sister, who departed many years ago in search of the sea. And with her come her companions, Alexander, navigator of infinite waters, Makeda, princess of the lands of the sun, and Amina, guardian of a wisdom that the ages cannot erase. They crossed seas and storms, passed through portals and circles to reach us. And today we seal once more the alliance between North and South, between land and ocean, between the lineage that remained and the lineage that departed and now returns. The murmur of approval that followed was not polished, it was authentic, that specific frequency of human voices when something resonates with what they already knew but had not yet been spoken aloud. The inhabitants of Amesbury did not receive the travelers as guests. They received them as parts of themselves that had been absent too long. Women approached Helena, touching her hair and her hands with the naturalness of those who recognize the texture of their own lineage in another's body, murmuring blessings in a language that Helena did not fully understand with her mind, but which her blood decoded with a surprising precision. Children surrounded Makeda with the fearless curiosity of childhood, which makes no separation between wonder and welcome, and the princess received that attention with the genuine joy of one who has never lost the capacity to be seen from the outside through her own inner eyes. Amina received respectful greetings from the elders with the reciprocity of one who recognizes equals, wisdom acknowledging wisdom across the time and space that separated them. Alexander was led to the central bonfire, where a cup of warm mead was placed in his hands, not as protocol, but as recognition. He accepted it with the reverence of one who understands that every gesture there was not protocol, but ritual. The conscious and intentional repetition of actions that bind the present to every previous time the same gesture was made with the same purpose. Edith led the group to her home, a spacious construction of stone and timber situated at the edge of the square, with windows that opened onto the cultivated fields and the distant mountains, with the specific arrangement of something built not merely to shelter, but to keep its residents in permanent visual contact with what awaited beyond. The interior was welcoming with that quality of welcome that is not decorative, but accumulated. Decades of lives lived with attention, of stories told around tables that now carried those stories in every mark and scratch of the wood. Beeswax candles poured golden light over surfaces that had absorbed golden light for generations. The tapestries on the walls were not ornamental, they were records. And Helena, moving her eyes across them, recognized symbol after symbol, the same ones Tiphys used to embroider, the same ones that appeared in the dreams Helena had always considered merely dreams, and which she now understood had never been merely that. "This house," said Edith, with the voice of one making a statement that is, at the same time, a revelation and a restitution, was built by our grandparents, and before them by those who came from Thula when ice still covered the world. You are home, Helena. You always were. You simply did not yet know it. The celebration began at dusk with the inevitable naturalness of things that need to happen and that, when the conditions arrive, happen without additional effort. The central square filled with life with that specific abundance of communities that celebrate not for occasion, but by nature, that have kept the capacity for festivity alive precisely because they understood that it is not a luxury, but a spiritual necessity. Bonfires were lit, tables assembled, musical instruments tuned with that careful attention that precedes music, not because technical perfection is the goal, but because the act of tuning is itself a form of preparation of the soul. The aroma of roasted meat, braided breads, and wine warmed with spices filled the air with the specific generosity of aromas that do not ask to be noticed. They simply enter. Helena, seated beside Edith with her heart in a state that fit completely within no emotional category she knew, watched Alexander being questioned by the village men about his travels and answering with those stories that, over the course of the journey, had gradually transformed from accounts of events into something closer to parables. Because sufficiently intense experiences told enough times always become parables. Makeda danced with the children around the bonfire with the joy that is only possible when one understands that one is exactly where one should be. Amina conversed with the elder women with the concentration of one who knows she is receiving something that cannot be repeated, because the wisdom of elders is always, to some degree, the wisdom of the unrepeatable. When the moon rose, full and luminous, as though it had calculated its appearance to coincide precisely with that moment, Edith rose and called for silence. And the silence arrived with the specific swiftness that comes only in communities where silence is also a form of language. "Tonight," she said, her voice steady with the steadiness that does not exclude emotion, but contains it so that it does not dissolve the clarity of what must be said. "We celebrate not merely the arrival of travelers, we celebrate the return of the lineage, the fulfillment of ancient promises, and the renewal of bonds that neither time nor sea could sever. Helena, daughter of Tiphys, you are the bridge between worlds, and with your arrival, Amesbury flourishes once more." The village broke into applause with that spontaneity that is only possible when collective emotion surpasses the need for coordination. Helena, unable to hold back her tears and unable to regret them, embraced Edith with the strength of one who embraces not merely a person, but the full meaning of having arrived. That night, beneath the glow of the moon, observing with the benevolent indifference of one who has already witnessed many stories reach their conclusion, the separation of generations was healed with the irreversible slowness of true healings. And the circle, begun by Tiphys on a dawn that none of those present had lived, yet which all of them carried in some deeper layer of memory, was, at last, complete. The night of stories and the secrets revealed. There was a cloak on Helena's shoulders that was not merely fabric, and she had known this from the instant Edith placed it upon her. The night moved gently over Amesbury, with that quality of nights that do not press the day to end, but accompany it in its gradual farewell. The bonfires crackled with the specific intensity of flames that warm not only the body, but something more interior and more difficult to name. The warmed wine circulated in ceramic jugs with the warmth of things that are shared. And there is a fundamental difference between receiving something and taking part in a sharing, which is the difference between being a guest and being a part. The braided breads, golden and fragrant with herbs and honey, were passed in a gesture of communion that needed no sacred text to be sacred. The intention with which the gestures were made was sufficient, and here the intentions were visible in every extended hand. Helena sat beside Edith, wrapped in the woolen cloak her aunt had placed over her shoulders, an ancient cloak woven by Tiphys's own hands before her departure, which still carried the distant scent of her mother, lavender and sea, that specific combination which Helena had always associated with a comfort she had never known the origin of, and which she now knew. At the touch of it, she felt herself embraced not only by Edith, but by all the women of her lineage who had come before, because certain objects hold affection with the same fidelity with which the earth holds seeds. Edith began to tell the stories with that quality of a narrator who does not narrate to inform, but to transmit, because there is an essential difference between the two, the same difference between teaching facts and teaching how to think. Her voice, steady and melodious, created in the air that specific texture that only the finest stories create, the sensation that what is being narrated is not the past, but the present of another time zone. She spoke of Tiphys and Lysimachus with the detail of one who was a witness and the precision of one who kept every particular as though knowing that one day she would have to return it to someone who would need it. Lysimachus was a distant cousin of our lineage, said Edith, And when he and Tiphys fell in love, they knew they would have to leave. The ancient laws forbade unions within the clan, not out of cruelty, but out of an ancestral understanding about blood that had become, over time, more rigid than the wisdom that had originally given rise to it. Helena listened to every word with that quality of attention that emerges when one is receiving information about one's own origins. Not curiosity, but necessity. She had never known the details of that story. Tiphys spoke of the past with a longing that had always seemed complete in itself, leaving no room for additional questions. Now the questions arrived all at once, and so did the answers. Before she left, continued Edith, her voice faltering slightly, not from weakness, but from that specific kind of emotion that surfaces when we descend to the most important point of a story we have carried too long. Tiphys made me swear that I would guard the land and keep the memory of our lineage alive. She told me that one day, if the gods allowed, someone from the family would return, and I swore. A pause. I raised my children here, taught them the ancient stories, and now my grandchildren grow up beneath the same stars that witnessed the birth of our ancestors. I never doubted the promise, because Tiphys had never made a promise she was not certain she could keep, even if it would not be she herself who kept it. Her voice steadied. And now, seeing you before me, Helena, I know she kept her part. She sent you back, carrying the spirit of the sea and the courage of the South. The words touched Helena with the depth of revelations that are not absolute news, but the confirmation of something the body already knew and which the mind was, at last, granting itself permission to accept. Alexander, seated near the bonfire with the mead in his hands that he had not drunk because he was too absorbed to remember he was holding it, listened with the attention of one who recognizes in another story elements of his own, because the story of Tiphys and Lysimachus, with all its Breton and Mediterranean specificity, was also, at its essential core, the story of two human beings who chose the truth of what they felt over the comfort of what was expected of them. He looked at Helena and saw in her eyes the reflection of the flames and the tears with that simultaneity that is the mark of moments of genuine transformation, when emotion and illumination arrive at the same time, each amplifying the other. He drew closer, took her hand in a silent gesture of support that was also, silently, a declaration. Edith noticed the gesture with the eyes of one who had spent decades learning to see what people do, and not merely what they say. I see that Tiphys's love repeats itself in you, Helena, she said, with the voice of one making a scientific observation about something that exceeds science. Alexander is to you what Lysimachus was to your mother, a companion of the soul, a navigator of destinies that run parallel to your own. Alexander inclined his head in respect with the specific humility of one who understands that he has received a blessing he did not ask for, but which he recognizes as necessary. Makeda, moved with that emotion which is not borrowed but genuinely provoked by stories that resonate with one's own, approached Helena and Edith with steps that carried the quality of one asking leave without using words. This story, she said, with the voice of one making a discovery and giving it form aloud at the same moment, does not belong only to one family. It belongs to all of us. I too left my land behind, leaving my father and everything that was certain and safe, seeking something I barely knew how to name. And now I understand that what we seek is not only in Thula, it is in every encounter, in every bond that renews itself, in every moment when we recognize in others what is most essential in ourselves. Amina nodded with the kind of agreement that is not merely protocolar, but carries the weight of years of observation arriving at the same place by different paths. The gods weave circular destinies. What appears entirely new is always, in some deeper layer, a return disguised as an arrival. Edith raised her cup with the solemnity of those who understand that certain moments deserve to be marked with a visible gesture, not merely felt inwardly. To those who depart and to those who remain, to those who navigate, and to those who keep watch. May the paths always cross, and may the bonds, even when stretched to their limit by distance and time, never break. Everyone raised their cup, and the toast was sealed with songs that had outlasted more history than any of those present could imagine. When the moon reached its highest point, that position in the sky that seems a deliberate pause, as though the moon itself needed a moment of contemplation before continuing, Edith led Helena to an ancient stone that rested in a corner of the square with the specific presence of objects that carry more history than their appearance suggests. It was covered in moss and in inscriptions worn by time with that quality of ancient inscriptions, not worn by neglect, but by use, by the touch of many hands across many generations that had deposited upon that surface the weight of many promises. "Here," said Edith, "Tiphys said farewell to me. She touched this stone and swore that, even from far away, our blood would remain united, that what the sea separated, blood would sustain." Helena knelt before the stone with that slowness which is respect in motion. She touched it with both hands. She felt the coldness of the rock, and also, undeniably, something more, a presence that was not physical warmth, yet which the body recognized as warmth, as though Tiphys were there, silently witnessing the return of the daughter she had sent back, not with instructions, but with instinct. Tears fell upon the stone, wetting the moss, and in that instant, that specific instant that could not have happened in any other place or time, Helena understood that Thule was not on the distant horizon they had been pursuing with ships and maps and will. Thule was here, in that encounter, in that love which had crossed generations without extinguishing itself, waiting only for the right moment to be recognized by the one who carried the right blood to recognize it. The renewed bonds and the awakening of the village. The small hours of Amesbury had a texture that existed nowhere else Helena had ever slept or tried to sleep. The sacred silence that covered the village was made of layers, the silence of the bonfires reducing themselves to embers, the silence of the families who had returned to their homes carrying something more than they had brought to the celebration, the silence of the trees around the square that held the echo of the songs with the specific fidelity of things that listen without needing to respond. Helena remained awake on the steps of Edith's house, watching the sky with the eyes of one who is not trying to see stars, but conversing with them. Alexander appeared without a sound, because he had learned over the course of the journey that certain states of Helena did not need to be interrupted, only accompanied. "Could you not sleep?" he asked in that late evening voice, the one used when one wants to make a presence without demanding a response. Helena smiled with that smile that happens more in the eyes than in the mouth. "How could I? My heart is overflowing in a way that no horizontal position can accommodate." He sat beside her, took her hand, and the two of them watched the sky with the specific ease of those who need to do nothing at all to be completely present with one another. When the sun finally rose over the hills with the gradual determination of things that do not press but persist, the village began to stir with that quality of mornings that feel like a new beginning, even to those not especially in search of one. The aroma of fresh bread in stone ovens mingled with the song of Brittany's birds, which sang differently from the birds of the Mediterranean and the birds of the African desert that Makeda knew. Sharper, more urgent, as though the birds of the north had learned that summer is brief and that one must say as much as possible while there is enough light to do so. The streets filled with movement with the naturalness of daily life that is, in certain communities, as laden with meaning as any formal ritual, because every gesture repeated with sufficient attention eventually becomes sacred. Helena observed all of this with the specific enchantment of one who is seeing for the first time something they always knew existed, but had lost the certainty they would ever find. She felt she belonged to that place, not in a way that denied all the other places she had belonged before, but in a way that completed them. Edith appeared in the doorway with the punctuality of those who rise early, not because they cannot sleep, but because they understand that dawn is the most honest hour of the day, when decisions made have a greater chance of being true than those made at night, under the influence of bonfire and wine. She brought with her a tray of warm breads, fresh cheese, and golden honey, not as an offering of hospitality, but as an extension of a welcome that had begun in the forest and had no intention of ending soon. Helena accepted the bread with a gratitude that had two layers: the immediate gratitude of hunger satisfied, and that other kind, deeper, of the person who realizes they are being cared for by someone who knows precisely the kind of care they need. Alexander watched the exchange between Helena and Edith with the silent and specific joy of one who witnesses something that was destined to happen, and that only needed enough time and enough miles of ocean to find its hour. He knew that reunion did not benefit Helena alone. It benefited the entire journey, which gained additional meaning each time it revealed that destiny is not a straight line, but a spiral that always returns to its point of origin, now transformed. Makeda and Amina joined the group with that specific energy of people who have slept under unfamiliar stars and awakened with the feeling that the stars were, after all, less unfamiliar than they had seemed. "The village is magical," said Makeda, with the eyes that had developed over the course of the journey, the capacity to recognize magic not as an exception to the world, but as an intrinsic quality of things when looked at with sufficient attention. Every house, every stone, every tree seems to tell a story, and all the stories are different parts of the same larger story. Amina agreed with that agreement that adds rather than merely confirms, and the people receive us not as strangers. They receive us as missing parts that, once found, complete something everyone had already felt was incomplete, but that no one had yet known how to name. Edith smiled with the specific pride of those who guard something precious and who, upon seeing it recognized by others, feel the validation of decades of care. Amesbury is not merely a village, it is living memory. Here we keep what the rest of the world has been forgetting. And you, in arriving, do not merely receive that past. You renew it with what you have lived, with the journeys you have made, with the alliances you have forged. You make it alive in a way that I alone could never have managed. After breakfast, Edith led the group through the village with the naturalness of one performing an introduction rehearsed not deliberately, but through the accumulation of years lived in that space. Every encounter was a celebration with the specificity of genuine celebrations. Embraces that had weight, blessings that had history, gifts that had memory. An elder with a long white beard, that kind of elder whose age seems to have reached a point of equilibrium beyond which time stops keeping count, handed Alexander a carved oak staff, saying, "For the navigator who is also a guardian, may this oak remind you that the deepest roots sustain the longest crossings." An elder woman with gray eyes that held depths impossible to fathom placed around Helena's neck an amber necklace with words that carried the weight of things said only once and for all time. This amber comes from the beaches where Tiphys played as a child. Now it returns to you, her daughter, completing a journey the amber made before any ship existed capable of making it. Makeda and Amina received their gifts with the reverence of those who understand they are receiving not objects, but transmissions, the continuity of memory, the recognition of belonging, a living thread linking past and future through the present instant. In the afternoon, Edith led them to the top of a hill that commanded a view of the village and the surrounding lands with the specific perspective of high places that were chosen not by accident, but because they offer exactly the view necessary to understand what lies below. From there, they could see the green fields, the dense and serene woodlands, the streams winding between valleys with that innocence of waters that do not know the sea is waiting for them. And in the distance, wrapped in a mist with a consistency that did not appear meteorological, the mountains, the same ones they had sighted from the sea, which had called Helena by name in a language prior to words. "These are the sacred mountains," said Edith, pointing with the precision of one who knows not only the location, but the meaning. "Our ancestors believe, and when I say believe, I do not mean as those who have faith in something they cannot see, but as those who know because they have seen that the gateway between worlds resides there, the portal that connects the land of the living to the land of the gods, the present to the past, the visible to the invisible." Helena fixed her gaze on the mountains with that look she had developed over the course of the journey, a look that does not merely see, but listens. "We need to go there," she said, with the steadiness of statements that are not decisions, but the recognition of what was already decided before being spoken. Edith nodded with the serenity of one who already knew. "I know, and I will guide you when the time comes." The welcome ritual and the dance of the lineages. What was about to happen in the square of Amesbury was not a ceremony. It was something older and more precise than any ceremony. At dusk, with the sky shifting from that deep blue to that specific violet that exists at no other hour of the day, the village gathered around the central bonfire with the synchronization of things that require no formal summons because the moment itself summons them. The stone circle was prepared with wildflowers, oak branches, and sacred mistletoe, not as decoration, but as activation, because in those elements there was an ancestral intelligence about what each one called forth when placed in the presence of the others. The elders took their positions at the points of the circle with the precision of those who occupy their place in a geometry drawn by someone who understood things that most people had long since stopped understanding. Skin drums and wooden flutes began to sound a melody that was not music in the decorative sense, but structure, a sonic framework that prepared the air, the space, and the people present for what was about to occur. Helena, Alexander, Makeda, and Amina were led to the center of the circle with that specific feeling of those who enter a space they know to be different, not visually, but fundamentally. The moon was beginning to rise, and its silver light fell over the scene with the precision of something that had been calculated, not by humans, but by forces that work on scales of time that render human planning irrelevant. Edith raised the silver cup to the sky with both hands, not as a symbolic gesture, but as a real act of communication with something that was above and that was, at the same time, within each of those present. She invoked the ancient gods with words that Helena recognized in some place prior to memory, the language of Thule, preserved across generations with the specific fidelity of languages that cease to be merely communication and become the custodianship of a way of seeing the world that cannot be expressed any other way. The words reach the group with the weight of true things that require no translation to be understood in their essence, because the essence of certain truths precedes the languages that express them. "O gods of sky and earth, of sea and wind," said Edith. And each word sounded like stone laid upon stone in the construction of something being raised in that very instant, yet which was, at the same time, the restoration of something that had existed before and had been waiting to be restored. The voice echoed across the square, and the drums answered with beats that made the ground vibrate at a frequency felt in the feet before it was perceived by the ears. The cup of need passed through the group with the solemnity of transmissions that are not merely symbolic, that transmit, in fact, something exceeding the liquid contained in the metal. Helena drank first, and the mead descended with that specific warmth of substances we heat before consuming, because there is ancestral wisdom in the understanding that certain things must be warmed before they can be received. Alexander drank next, feeling that passage of something that was not merely temperature, but intention, as though the liquid carried within it the memory of every moment it had ever been prepared, from the very first, long before any of those present had existed. Makeda and Amina completed the transmission, each with the specific awareness of those who understand they are taking part in something that includes them, yet is larger than any one of them individually. When the cup returned to Edith, and she poured the last drops onto the earth as an offering, not with carelessness, but with the precision of one who returns to the soil what belongs to it, the drums intensified and the dance began. Helena was led to the inner circle, reserved, Edith explained without needing to explain, for the women of the lineage, with that quality of invitation that leaves no room for refusal, not through coercion, but because it arrives at the precise point where refusal would be a betrayal of the self. Edith took one of her hands. A distant cousin whom Helena had barely had time to meet took the other. And then the movement began, not dance in the performative sense, but dance in its original sense, prior to the stage and the spectator. Movement as prayer, as communication with forces that have no form, but which respond to the rhythm with which bodies surrender to them. As she turned, as she leaped, as her bare feet touched the sacred earth at that frequency which exceeds the audible, Helena felt something happen that had been neither promised nor anticipated. All the women of her lineage dancing through her. Tiphys's mother, the grandmother, and all those who had come before in a chain that stretched back to a point so distant in time that it lost the quality of history and took on the quality of myth. The tears fell, and they were the most honest possible expression of a joy that exceeds the human capacity to be contained in an upright posture. Alexander danced in the outer circle with the men, and for the first time in the entire journey he felt, completely, what it meant to be a guardian beyond an explorer, because the dance they performed there was not a celebration of conquest, but an affirmation of belonging to the cycle of the earth, the cycle of generations, the cycle of promises that must be renewed in order to remain true. His feet on the ground revealed something that the sea, for all its vastness, had never been able to offer, a solidity that is not limitation, but foundation. Makeda danced with the young women of the village with that joy which exists only in people who have learned to fully inhabit the present moment, without one eye on the past and the other on the future, but entirely there, entirely in that moment that would not repeat itself. Amina moved with contemplative grace, her eyes closed, surrendering to the rhythm with the specific disposition of one who understands that certain forms of wisdom only arrive when we stop pursuing them and become a vessel rather than a hunter. The entire square was a single organism breathing, pulsing, celebrating, not an occasion, but the very continuity of life. When the dance ended, with that specific exhaustion of the good kind, the kind that emerges after something the body and soul have done together in full accord, those present lay down upon the grass with laughter and quickened breathing, and the sky was so full of stars that it seemed a collective approval. Edith approached Helena, embraced her with the tenderness of those who know that certain embraces are also blessings, and said, "Tonight, my niece, you are no longer merely the daughter of Tiphys. You are no longer merely a daughter of the sea. You are a daughter of Amesbury, daughter of the earth, daughter of lineages that extend to the beginning of time, and that will extend beyond any horizon any one of us is capable of imagining." Helena rested her head on Edith's shoulder, feeling herself, for the first time since she had set out in search of Thule, perhaps for the first time in her life, completely whole. The circle had closed, not the circle of the journey. That one continued still, with everything that yet awaited beyond the mountains. But the circle of belonging, which had been broken since before her birth, and which had needed all of that crossing to be made whole. The secrets of the mountains and the call beyond. The following morning brought something none of the previous nights had brought: clarity. The kind of clarity that only arrives after something internal has finally been resolved. Helena woke with that quality of wakefulness that distinguishes the awakening after truly restorative sleep. Not the sleep that merely removes exhaustion, but the kind that reorganizes. The sky over Amesbury was clear with the transparency of mornings that exist after deep weeping, after emotions that cleanse what had grown opaque. Stepping out of Edith's house, she found Alexander already on his feet, but not with that restless vigil that sometimes overtook him at sea when the horizon unsettled him by being too vast. This wakefulness was different. It belonged to someone who had slept enough and who had awakened with a question that needed to be asked before the day began building arguments against it. "They are calling us," he said, without specifying, because there was no need to specify. The mountains. Always the mountains, since Douarnenez, since the horizon glimpsed with that vision that was not only of the eyes. Helena placed her hand on his shoulder with the gesture of those who know that certain answers require no additional words. "Yes, and this time we will not go alone." Edith appeared behind them as though the conversation had summoned her, carrying with her a map unfolded with the specific care of objects that have been treated with reverence long enough for the reverence to become instinctive. The map was made from goatskin, not out of technical limitation, but out of the choice of a material that would last not decades, but centuries, that would withstand not casual use, but the time that separates those who keep from those who, generations later, need what was kept. It revealed hidden paths that wound between valleys and forests, with the logic of trails that were not drawn by planning, but by the accumulation of footsteps of people who had found the way by the oldest method of all: trial, attention, and return when wrong. At the center of the map, marked not with a cartographic symbol, but with the kind of detail that only makes sense to those who know what they are looking for: the chamber of the ancestors. "My grandparents," said Edith, with the voice of one transmitting not information but custodianship, "used to say that within the chamber there are inscriptions that reveal the true path to Thulo. But when they said true, they did not mean geographical. They meant essential." A pause. "Because Thula is not merely a place, it is a state of consciousness, a portal between the visible and the invisible that every human being carries within, and which, in most cases, remains closed for an entire lifetime." Helena felt a shiver move along her spine, with that specific quality of shivers that are not from cold, but from recognition, because everything that had happened since Concarneau, all the northern lights, all the invisible voices, all the circles that revealed themselves where straight lines had been expected, suddenly articulated itself into a single understanding that had been waiting to be named. Edith proposed their departure for the following dawn with the decisiveness of one who has already calculated what needed to be calculated and now merely communicates the result. "The journey to the mountains takes 3 days," she explained. "The path is steep with a steepness that belongs not only to the terrain, but to the disposition demanded of those who walk it. Only those whose heart is aligned with sacred purposes, and here aligned does not mean perfect, but honest, are able to pass through the veils that protect the chamber." Alexander nodded with the specific gravity of one who understands the weight of something without, on that account, retreating from it. Makeda, who had listened to the conversation with the attention of one who knows she is receiving information that will change something fundamental, stepped forward with a determination that was not stubbornness, but clarity of purpose. "I am going as well. I came this far guided by the desire to see the lights of Thule, to understand what my father could only describe and never show. If there is a chamber that holds those secrets, I need to be there, not out of curiosity, but because something within me knows it is where I am meant to be." Amina, ever at the princess's side with that loyalty which is not servility but choice. "Where she goes, I go. Our destinies are intertwined in a way that did not begin here and will not end here." The preparations began with that specific efficiency of groups that have already learned to work together under the pressure of long crossings, without wasted motion, without unnecessary hesitation, without the rigidity of those who follow lists, and with the precision of those who have internalized what is essential. Edith gathered provisions with the knowledge of one who has been preparing journeys to sacred mountains long enough to know that what seems superfluous tends to be necessary, and what seems necessary tends to be less than one thinks. Medicinal herbs chosen with the precision of a language she had spent decades learning, fresh water from a sacred spring, and here, sacred was not ornamental. There was a specific quality to that water, a lightness that exceeded chemical composition and which those who drank it recognized in the body before understanding it in the mind. Oak staffs consecrated by the elders with words that carried, according to Edith, the accumulated intention of generations of guardians. Helena accepted hers with a reverence that no longer required effort. It had become natural over the course of a journey that had been, in its deepest essence, a training in exactly that kind of reverence. That afternoon, the elders of Amesbury gathered in the square with the specific gravity of rites performed because they must be performed, not because anyone decided they would be, but because tradition demands them with the urgency of things that must be maintained so that other things may continue to exist. They formed a circle around the 5 travelers, chanting songs of protection with voices that had been used for that purpose long enough for the use to have shaped not only the voice, but the capacity to transmit through it something that exceeds sound. The eldest of the elders, the one whose age seemed to have reached the point beyond which time ceases to mark a difference, approached Helena with that slowness of people who make each movement with full awareness that it may be their last, and who, for that reason, perform each one with the completeness it deserves. He placed upon her brow a mark made with sacred ashes, ashes from fires that had been kept alive across generations, which carried, according to Edith, the memory of everything that had been burned so that the light could continue. "May the eyes of the Spirit open," he said, with a voice that was at once specific and universal, personal and ancestral. "And may the hidden paths reveal themselves to those who seek with a heart honest enough to bear what they find." The same marks on the other 4. And the silence that followed, that dense and fertile silence which is the result of words that have landed exactly where they needed to land. At night, with the village at rest and the sky performing that silent display of stars that requires no audience to occur, yet becomes something different when there is someone who truly looks, Helena remained awake. She felt Edith's presence before she saw her, because between the two of them, in those few days, there had developed that quality of mutual perception that normally takes decades to develop between people, but which emerges instantaneously when 2 souls recognize in one another what they had been seeking without knowing they were seeking. "Are you afraid?" Edith asked, sitting beside her with the ease of bodies that have aged enough to stop wasting energy on pretense. Helena considered the question with genuine seriousness, because it was the kind of question that deserved an honest answer rather than a reassuring one. "Not fear," she said at last. "Reverence. I feel that we are about to touch something that transcends human understanding, and reverence is the only honest response before that." Edith smiled with the smile that Helena had learned to recognize as the smile of correct answers. "It is precisely that reverence that qualifies you. Those who arrive without it tend to return broken by what they find. Those who arrive with it return transformed by the same." The 2 sat in silence, side by side, watching the constellations that appeared not static but in very slow motion, drawing, on a time scale that exceeds any individual life, maps that no navigator had ever managed to copy completely, yet which all had felt as guides. The horizon that opens and the oath of the new path. There was something different about the dawn of that departure, not in the light, in the quality of attention with which everyone received it. The sky opened over Amesbury in shades of gold and silver, with that quality of dawns that seemed to have been composed specifically for the day they announce. Not that generic beauty the sun produces out of habit, but that other kind, intentional, which emerges on days when something that matters is about to begin. The village woke to a reverent silence that was different from the silence of rest. It was the silence of those who witness something they understand they have no adequate words to accompany. The 5 travelers, Helena, Alexander, Makeda, Amina, and Edith, prepared themselves with the precision of those who depart, knowing the path will demand every ounce of attention they can bring. In the central square, the inhabitants of Amesbury had formed a human corridor without anyone having suggested it, because certain formations arise spontaneously when a community feels the weight of what is happening. Children scattered petals of wildflowers at the feet of the 5 with that specific generosity of children who have not yet learned to keep what is beautiful for themselves. It was a farewell. It was a blessing. It was the collective recognition that those departing carried with them not only their own hopes, but those of everyone who remained and of everyone who, in previous generations, had waited for exactly that moment. Helena stopped at the threshold of the village, that specific point where the space of the community ends and the space of the world begins, and which in ancient communities was always marked in some way, sometimes visibly, sometimes only felt. She turned. She looked at Amesbury with that gaze that does not photograph but receives, that does not try to capture but to honor. Every house, every tree, every stone seemed to pulse with something she could only call mutual recognition. The land watching her depart with the same attention with which she had arrived. "It is not farewell," she murmured, more to herself than to any of the others, more to Amesbury than to any human being present. "It is until soon, for those who know that paths are circular." Edith placed her hand on her shoulder with that touch which had, in a matter of days, become the touch of someone known for an entire lifetime. Because sometimes blood creates a familiarity that time cannot create more quickly than in a single encounter. The land never forgets those who honor it, and you, my niece, have honored this land with every step you have taken upon it. When you return, it will receive you with everything it has kept during your absence, and it will have kept much. The words warmed Helena with that warmth that has no temperature yet is more real than any physical heat, and she turned toward the mountains with the specific courage of one who no longer needs to pretend they are unafraid in order to move forward. The path began gently, winding between cultivated fields that spring had colored in greens so different from one another they seemed deliberate. The palate of someone who understood that variety is a form of fullness that uniformity can never attain. The oaks around them were ancient with that ancientness that grants trees not merely height and girth, but a presence that younger ones have not yet developed. The presence of those who have survived long enough to have opinions about what endures. Helena walked beside Edith, absorbing teachings about herbs, about birds, about stones, not in the academic mode of the transmission of information, but in the ancestral mode of the transmission of relationship, learning that a certain herb heals not merely as botanical data, but as the knowledge of something that cares for you when you care for it. Each step was also a lesson in what it means to belong to a place, not to own it, not merely to inhabit it, but to relate to it with the specific reciprocity of relationships that last. As they advanced and the terrain began to incline with the gradual seriousness of ascents that make no pretense of being easy, the vegetation changed with that progressiveness nature uses when it is preparing a transition. The open and generous oaks giving way to pine trees growing tall and close together, as though the altitude had taught the trees that solidarity is a strategy of survival. The air grew cooler and charged with the specificity of places that most bodies never visit, that quality of altitude that is not merely temperature, but a different relationship with the world. Edith pointed to a rock formation rising in the distance with that quality of formations that were chosen, not by the wind, but by something more deliberate, to mark a boundary that is not arbitrary. "The gate of the winds," she said in the voice used for names that are also instructions. From here onward, we walk in silence with open hearts and serene minds, not as an imposed discipline, but as respect for something that observes and that only allows through those who arrive with no intention of dominating what cannot be dominated. All of them nodded with the naturalness of those who understand that certain rules are not restrictions, but descriptions of the only way in which something can be done with honesty. When they reached the Gate of the Winds, a sudden and icy breeze enveloped them with the precision of something acting with intention. Not randomly, as the wind usually acts, but with that directed quality of forces that know where they are going. Edith raised the oak staff to the sky with both hands and pronounced ancient words with the voice of those who are not performing a ritual, but enacting it, a subtle and absolutely essential distinction. The wind intensified for a moment that seemed longer than the seconds it lasted, because there was something within it that needed to be experienced before it could be evaluated, and evaluation was only possible after the complete experience. And then it ceased, with the abruptness of decisions made by forces that require no gradual transitions to communicate that they have decided. "We have been accepted," said Edith, with a relief that was not the relief of one who had not been certain. It was the relief of one who had been certain, but who, out of respect for what was testing them, had waited for confirmation before celebrating. Helena felt gratitude move through her entire body, not gratitude directed toward any person or specific entity she could name, but that diffuse and total gratitude that emerges when one realizes that the path being walked is, in fact, the path that should be walked. The sun was beginning to set, that specific hour when horizontal light has a quality that no other hour produces, the quality of things seen from the side, with a perspective that light from overhead never allows. When they reached an elevated plateau from which the sacred mountains were visible in their fullness for the first time, the highest peak shone with perpetual snow that did not appear cold. It appeared luminous, as though the snow held the light within it rather than merely reflecting it. Edith pointed to a narrow cleft between two crags that was not visible from any angle other than that exact one. "There is the entrance to the Chamber of the Ancestors. We will arrive at nightfall tomorrow, if we walk with the right disposition." Alexander studied the steep path that still stretched ahead and nodded with the specific determination of one who assesses a difficulty without being dissuaded by it. Helena, at his side, took his hand. "We are ready," she said, not as a statement of technical preparedness, but as a declaration of spiritual disposition. Ready for whatever comes, ready for whatever is revealed, ready for whatever is transformed. Makeda and Amina drew close, and the five formed a spontaneous circle, because certain forms emerge naturally when the people who form them have already surpassed the need to rehearse them. When the first star appeared, the one that always appears before the others, as though it bore a specific responsibility to announce the night to the rest, Edith lit a small fire and the group gathered around it with that ease they had developed over so many shared nights that the act had become a language of its own. Bread and warmed wine were shared in a silence that was not the absence of conversation, but the presence of something more essential than any conversation could be. Helena looked into the flames with those eyes that had learned to see beyond the surface of fire, and saw, reflected in it with that clarity that exists only when we stop doubting what we see, the face of Tiphys, not as a ghost, not as a hallucination, as a presence. She smiled with the smile of one who sees something they have waited long to see and who now sees it completely. Alexander, looking at Helena, felt the specific peace of one who is exactly where they should be, doing exactly what they should be doing, beside exactly who they should be beside. Makeda whispered a prayer to the gods of her homeland in the words she had learned before learning any other language, because there is specific wisdom in first languages before the world teaches us to translate. Amina murmured protection incantations with the concentration of one who does their work knowing that the work matters even when no one besides her is aware that it is being done. And Edith, guardian of all of it for decades, blessed the five with words that were spoken aloud yet seemed to come from far deeper than any human throat can reach. May the paths open, may the veils dissolve, may the truth reveal itself to those whose heart remains honest before what they find. Not what they expected to find, but what is truly there. The fire crackled in response, and the stars multiplied over the plateau with that profusion that occurs on nights when the sky decides to show what it is capable of when there is someone sufficiently attentive to deserve the display. The group rested, and the rest that night was itself a preparation. Because what awaited beyond the cleft in the crags, in the chamber where the ancestors kept what time had failed to erase, would demand not only strength and courage, but that rarer and more necessary quality, the willingness to be completely transformed by what one will find, without attempting to control the form that transformation will take. In the next episode, guided by Edith along the hidden trails of the sacred mountains, Helena, Alexander, Makeda, and Amina will face not only the altitude and the cold that cuts like blades forged from everything not yet understood, but the veils between the visible and the invisible that guard the chamber of the ancestors, that place where the words that went unspoken in life continue to be pronounced forever, where the ancient inscriptions pulse with a light that belongs neither to torch nor to sun. There, in the depths where silence has the texture of prayer and where time operates differently from anything any of those present was ever trained to comprehend, Helena will discover that Thula was never a horizon to be reached. It was always an interior portal waiting to be awakened. And awakenings, like all true transformation, exact the highest price there is, the previous version of oneself, which must be left behind with the same completeness with which Tiphys left Amesbury, entirely without reservation, knowing that what remains is love and what departs is destiny. Between visions that connect what was to what is yet to be, trials that test not strength, but the willingness to surrender to what cannot be controlled, and revelations that will cause each member of the group to question whether the longest crossing in a life is the one that traverses seas or the one that traverses the heart itself. A final oath will be sealed beneath the lights that dance above the summit, not of arrival, but of eternal return to the mystery that pulses within every human being who refuses to call impossible what has simply not yet come to pass.